can also minimize the.
All right. I can minimize this.
Yeah, you can turn it into a
Little square.
not even just a little square, you can turn it into a little bar.
Boop. But I wanted to see people's faces and their reactions to things. Okay, fine. We're gonna go like this. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. So last week we learned some techniques for actually being able to engage in this type of work, like techniques to foster inclusion and make things more accessible for people, and that are helpful fallbacks for us. If we don't learn anything else, we're going to learn people's names. There's very minimum. That's going to provide some benefit for people. So this week we're going to focus a lot more on character. I really think that it's important to develop character before you start to layer in relationships. So knowing who your character is, and then that's going to change invariably as you start layering in more relationship context and more of your setting context and more of your other kind of game mechanics and things that are going on, that sort of context. But it's important to start with like a solid sense of your character's voice and identity and what that is. So we're going to start by kind of developing some depth within our characters. So hopefully everybody did their homework and has developed a little bit of a backstory for your character and values that your character holds closely. These are going to inform you as we start doing some of our exercises today. So first I want to talk about this theory of immersion. So this was proposed by a game scholar called Moira Turkington, who talks about the process of embodiment over time as somebody becomes more accustomed with their character. Now, she was writing about this from a role-playing context, but I think that this applies almost directly to what we're doing, especially like in what we're doing, the acting aspect of it is all about this embodiment, and it's about like becoming comfortable and at times one with your character. I think that great acting is informed by great role playing. And if you learn to role play really amazingly, then it will improve your ability to act and make it easier for you to get into role and to make good choices on stage and things like that. So those stages of immersion are marionette. So the idea here is that you have created this character, but you're still kind of pulling the strings of your character from afar. You're manipulating the character. You have an idea of who the character is, but you're not yet totally inside that character. You're puppeting that character from afar. Then this next part is puppet, and this is where puppets, like we have our hand sort of inside the character, and we're a little bit inside the character, but we haven't totally started to feel a presence of that character kind of settle into us. Then mask. So this is where the character starts to be this layer who kind of exists over your entire person, where you have this a little bit of a removal from the character, but you're still very much embodying the character. A lot of the character's mannerisms are their own. A lot of the character's voice is very much their own. Like that character is able to kind of manifest in your body in a way that feels really authentic. And then possessing force. And this is where the character like takes over and you sort of dissolve and are just an observer, sort of watching and maybe doing a little bit of steering here and there, but essentially like the character like has this power over you and you are making choices fully informed by the character. This sort of possessing force thing, like there's terms in many different languages for this, like they call it duende in Spanish. There's like many different like kind of like spaces and times in which people have talked about this idea of this possessing force. And I think it's kind of rare. You don't expect to always feel as though you are, the character is a possessing force. But when it happens, like, wow, does it feel good? It's magic. That dissolving of yourself that happens and that like truly like living within the character is magic. There's just nothing else quite like it. It's truly amazing. So that's kind of this like theory of immersion. And I think that like where we really want to be is we want to like, you're going to go through the stages. Anytime you build a new character, you're not going to, welcome. You're not going to instantaneously get into that mask phase, but the more that you develop characters and the more practice this becomes, the faster those stages are going to come. So you're going to initially, when you start doing this work, you're going to be in the marionette puppet stage for a while before it starts to finally feel like a mask. But then once you've been doing this work for a while, it might be like 30 seconds of marionette into puppet and okay, mask, I've got it. So the more you practice this and getting into these roles and getting into character, the easier it's going to be. There's a lot that you can do to also assist yourself with like putting on the role and getting into character. I love to use playlists. I love to like build character playlists that will help me to kind of get into the character's headspace. I also like to have like a little catchphrase or something that helps me like both drop into the character's voice, which I want to be distinct from my own, as well as like inform me something about the character, like something that is like a closely held value of theirs, or something that they might, I know that they're always going to stand up for, something like that. And being able to practice with that and have those things are great tools for being able to get into role.
Hey, Kara,
Yeah.
is there a slide we're not seeing?
Yes. Are you not?
I see 03 developing depth.
Oh, weird. You know, there's no slides changing?
Did you share?
No.
No, let me just stop it and reshare. Stop share.
Are you recording?
Thanks.
And I am recording, yes. Share screen. Share. How's that?
Yep.
Can you see that? Great.
Thanks.
Figure out puppet mask, possessing force. Awesome. We already talked about this, but great interactive characters have needs, right? They've got these heart-shaped holes. And I think it's important for us to like make the distinction here that, you know, the needs that all characters have needs. So the thing that we want to be distinct from these types of characters versus like literary characters or characters that we don't have interactions with is that those needs need to be able to be embodied in a way that involves the audience. So you need the participants to move forward. You can't move forward without participants. That often will tie into your interaction mechanics and like your tasks and like different things that you need done. And motivating those things is not something that you need to come up with alone. Like hopefully your production will have really good motivations for why your character would involve other people. And if your production doesn't have great reasons for why, then that may be something that you need to workshop, like both with your, you know, with your writers and other people. But those motivations should be something that are pretty robust and built in.
I got a question.
Yeah.
On our roles, we all have a need, right?
Yeah.
I don't have anything. So running late, obviously, we all have that.
Yeah.
So like with those archetypes, that's something if like at an audition, maybe, right? I could choose that. It's like what, maybe the audition doesn't have or the improv exercise doesn't have that, but you could question mark, like you could fill your.
Absolutely. I think if you are at an audition and you don't understand the character's need or motivation in the scene, just ask the director once you're in the room with them and be like, I need some clarity about where are we in space in this? Like, what has my character just experienced? Like, what is motivating this particular scene? And they should be able to give you that context. And if they can't give you that context, then like, run.
Well, funny enough, part of why I'm taking this with you is I have an audition 2 days.
Oh.
Improvise stuff.
Okay.
And I come from more of you got a script, you studied
Yeah.
for several months.
Yeah.
And, you know, prepared. Yeah. So it's not but with what you've been, thank you so much for your timing. It's seriously, so that like now you all know my agenda, like what is she here? So
Now we're motivation.
So I'm looking at, and now we're 2 days out from it. So of
Right.
course I'm now looking at everything. It's like, can I use that in the audition? Yeah. So that's all. That's why I was like, sometimes we could probably just use, like if we wanted to like
Absolutely.
offer them something.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like if you don't have clear direction on it, then I would say absolutely like picking a direction on it
Yeah.
so that you have something that's going to motivate. Because also they may see something that you're bringing to the table that they're like, oh wow, that's a really cool take. I didn't see it that way before.
That's some of the difference between immersive and improv. Improv, you endow everybody else.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
If I walk up to you and I say, Aunt Sarah, I haven't seen you since the girl.
Yeah.
Then you now know who you are. So they didn't tell me that that's who you were. And in immersion, I think they would tell you you're playing this character and here's
Right.
the motivation to pull other people in.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like, and there's a difference in endowing in an improv, like especially a comedic improv scene versus in an interactive theater environment where you have the power as an interactive character to endow people with role, but you want to make sure that it's aligning with what they're telling you also. So you want to ask them some questions before you make that endowment. So you're like,
Which is
hi,
the
what's your
opposite
name?"
of improv. You don't ask questions, you make assumptions.
Exactly, exactly. So,
Their theater name has the word immersive in it.
oh,
So
okay,
though the audition is gonna be improvised exercises, whatever else they describe.
yeah,
Their theater is like American immersive. theater.
interesting. Awesome. Let's chat after class because
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
love
sorry,
to find
I
out
didn't
more
mean to
about it.
derail.
Like, oh, that's no worries.
Now
I
you
think
know my
this is
agenda
helpful
that you-
discussion. It's great. All right. So, one of my favorite books of all time, Gary Izzo's The Art of Play. Gary wrote this fantastic book, which talks about this form. He wrote this book back in like 1997, and it remains like the seminal text about all of this type of work. It's so good. I can't say enough good about it. So he, throughout all of the many different interactive theater works that he put together, he found that there were these 6, what he calls essential qualities. And these are essential qualities that interactive characters have that normal character or that other characters and maybe literary characters or play works and things like that might not have. So you don't have to have all of these characteristics, but you need to have at least one of them. And so what are these? They're extraordinary, identifiable, vulnerable, fascinating, approachable, likable. What does that mean? Glad you asked. So someone extraordinary has lived a life that is full of wonder and excitement, right? They stand apart from others. They are extraordinary. So they have lots of stories and experiences that they can share. That's extraordinary. Someone identifiable, they stand out in a crowd. You can tell clearly based on the way that they are holding themselves, their manner of dress, you know what their persona is. They kind of almost embody that persona. Someone's wearing a military uniform and you're like, I know who that guy is. So their manner of speech and dress like make them very easy to identify. Vulnerable. So someone vulnerable has experienced some hardships, responded to it with openness. Instead of being shut down, that person needs help and looks for help, right? Somebody fascinating is multi-layered. They've got a wealth of different experiences. They're keen and observant, and they have mystery, right? They've got secrets and they've got mysteries to uncover. So they might like tease some of those things with people and you know, act a little mysterious, drop little things, or let the mask slip at times, right? Somebody approachable. They have a warm and friendly demeanor. They usually are bearing a pleasant expression. And they just kind of give off this sense of welcome. They'll start conversations easily with people and say hello to people very easily. And someone likable. So this one was I love this definition. I think it's so wonderful. They give off the impression that they approve of themselves and others. And I love that like definition of likability because likability is one of those things that everyone tries to achieve with writing. And I feel like this is such a great way to like nail down what makes people likable. So they give praise and support really readily to people who they find deserving. And they like people. So they find lots of people deserving of that praise. So you don't have to have all of those character qualities, but you should pick at least one that you're kind of going for with your character. And then other elements that you need in order to develop a character appearance, right? The way that the character looks and dresses. So maybe there's like a full makeup look that you have with this character. Maybe there's a costume that is very, identifiable for this character. These are things that like you may have some ability to influence and develop on your own, but you probably want to do this with your production and with your team to develop these things, because you also want to make sure that your characters are distinct and have different appearances and all different ages and body sizes and all these other things. So we want to have that appearance to be a collaborative effort with you and your team. Your mannerisms, how your character holds themselves and how they behave physically. This is something that I think is one of the quickest ways to develop character, is to like physically do stuff that is different than the way that you do stuff. So we're going to do this a little bit later with exercises, but embodiment is one of the fastest ways to get yourself to drop into character. Your voice and your tone, what the character sounds like if they speak, or you know, just do you have an accent? Like, what does it sound like? You know, what kind of inflection are you using? What emphasis do you put on words? And developing a voice that is a little distinct from yours is helpful for like creating those boundaries and differentiation between you and the character. And then backstory. This is something that all of you worked on this week. So your backstory are these, you know, causes and conditions that they've experienced. Like a lot of who we are is informed by, in any given moment, the things that we've experienced previous to that, right? Our current kind of understanding of ourselves is informed by the experiences that we have. So you can create a character that you may not know exactly what their causes and conditions and experiences are. And those things might emerge for you in a moment. It's helpful to have some basis of that, but also I very much encourage that listen to the character. Like if you're in an interactive moment with someone and they're like, oh, I had an experience like this, and the character says, oh, me too. Then like listen to your character and be like, oh, wow, I had that experience too. My uncle was also in the Navy. Like, and then incorporate that, build that into your character's backstory, allow that character to have some flexibility to live and breathe and change as you encounter different things. Because the character will inform you about what's working and what's not working for them. Don't try to jam something into your backstory if you feel like the character is rejecting it. It's not going to work, and it's going to read as really inauthentic. So build a backstory that like both emerges naturally and that is flexible and fluid within the play space. Now we're going to do some exercises. So our workshop was really short today because we've got a lot of work to do. This is just, you know, it's going to be fun. So, so we're going to do this exercise where we are going to begin walking normally as ourselves.
You want to check chat to see if we have any questions?
Oh, yeah.
The lecture bit.
Hello, everybody. Oh, can you see the slides now, by the way? Is that all working?
Yes.
Great. So we're going to move. So we're going to start by moving around. Folks online, hopefully you have some space that you can move around in, even if you can't walk, maybe just moving in place and, you know, trying to get some gestures and movements in there that you can do. So we're going to start as ourselves, and then we're going to transition into the character. And as we do that, we're going to kind of then go into a really exaggerated space. So I'm going to give us like a 1 to 10 scale of like how exaggerated our movement's going to be. And at 10, it's almost comical, like goofy over exaggerations of your character's movement. And then we're going to go relegate it back to a 5. Because you're going to feel really silly and really goofy, and that's okay. This is a safe place. We're all going to look goofy here. It's going to be great. Things to be aware of. Be aware of your gait, you know, like how fast you're walking. Be aware of your foot placement. Where you're placing weight in your step. Is it the same as where you do? Is it different than where you normally do? Whether you're leading with your head, your heart, or your groin, like these are your kind of your hips. These are things that are in some traditions of theater are thought of as like really essential like aspects of embodiment of character, where the characters are often thought of as head characters, heart characters, or groin characters. I think that this is like, that's a simplification a little bit, but like it's a useful one. It's helpful. I think it's interesting for when you're embodying the character to think about those things. You know, what are you doing with your arms? What are you doing with your hands? How are you holding your shoulders? How are you holding your head? So we're going to go through all those things as we begin to just walk as our characters. Walk or move. You don't have to walk. So now I'm going to pause so we can do this. All right. Pausing the recording. Oh, wait. Oh, you're right. Resume share. Resume record. All right, great. So next we're going to do this exercise called hot seat. So this is all about developing your character's voice and some of your character's mannerisms as well. Like, right, we just did a physical kind of embodiment exercise. So using that, using what we learned from our characters, I want you to also bring that into this next exercise, which is very much about developing your manner of speech and how you answer questions. So we're going to put everybody in the hot seat. And you're going to, then everyone else is going to ask that character questions. Your character is in a place where they are just going to answer completely truthfully. This isn't about like obscuring any things about your identity or anything like that. This is answering as honestly as possible so that like the character informs you about things that are true and real for them. So it's helpful to just answer the first thing that comes to your mind. Whatever the first thing that comes up, go with it. You can always change the answers to these things later. You don't have to get attached to it. But important is to be authentic. Try and use your character's voice. That voice, you'll notice, will start to develop over time as people ask you more and more robust questions. And importantly, don't use your own life. We want to develop a distinction between us and our character. That is important and good for having healthy boundaries. We don't want to just take our life and reskin it as the character. We want to take things that inspire us, or maybe there are elements of things, or maybe we're basing it on, you know, a relative or someone that we know really well, a friend or things like that. You want to pull those elements in, but you want to change them, and you don't want them to be you, and you don't want them to be too close to things that are personal to you, because that can be unhealthy and unsafe for you in a stage environment. And also don't try to be funny. This is not about being funny or improv. This is about being authentic and finding that stuff with our characters. So I'm going to hand this over to Athena to run for the folks online, and then we're going to do it here in person. So spend kind of 3 to 5 minutes per person. Facilitators, you may want to be a little bit rigid about your timekeeping to make sure that we have time to get to everybody. Because these things have a tendency to spiral out of control because it's fun. It's very enjoyable. All right, so now I'm going to pause the recording again and we'll get started.
Did you happen to bring a headset?
Okay, so the
Another person.
share screen.
So inspired.
Can everyone see that screen? All right, great. So, okay, the homework I want everybody to do for next time is to, I want you to do a little journaling, a little writing about your character. So I want you to envision a time when your character felt immense gratitude and journal about just the first thing that comes up. I want you to imagine the scene itself. What was going on? What kind of environment were you in? What did things look like, smell like, sound like, taste like? And write about all those senses as you envision a time in which your character felt profound gratitude. I want you to do that same exercise for a feeling of great tenderness or intimacy. And I want you to do the same thing for awe, a time that your character experienced overwhelming awe. And so the point of doing these journal exercises is we're finding those connections. We're finding like depth about connection. So all of these reflections are about times in which your character is feeling deeply connected. Because even the worst villains have these things about them, right? So we're going to develop and enrich and deepen those characters with some of those exercises. And then next week, we're going to be focusing in a lot on relationship building. And as we build relationships, that is how scene happens. And so we're going to focus in next week on relationships, scene, and spotlight. All right, so that's it for this week. Pencil. Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Gratitude, what was the second one?
Tenderness.
Thank you all for today. That helped.
And awe.
Yeah.
Oh, we
Definitely
know.
used to
Okay.
doing any sort of